All right, what's up, signers of the Encelia Accords? This is Stephen and Josh from Phantology, and today we have a special guest. We have Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, a popular booktuber. So what's up, Mike? Happy to have you on.
Oh, popular. That's a strong use of that word. I'd say just above the radar. How's that? Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
If you're a known booktuber, I think that makes you pretty popular.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think about it. It was just a year ago. People are like, "Who is this guy trying to talk about Wheel of Time?" Yeah.
But we're gonna talk some peace talks. This book is brand new. It's exciting for Phantology actually because I don't think in our existence we've had a book, a new release come out that we've been nearly as excited for, and it's been several years. I think 5 years now since our last Dresden release. So Josh and I just finished it this morning. I think Mike, you got an advanced copy, and you already have a
Did.
couple videos up about it. So yeah, we're real excited to talk this one. I think we have some pretty raw thoughts here.
Hey, if you guys just finished it, I can't wait. I can't wait to hear these reactions because, I had to have these reactions. And I had to keep them to myself for a week. So it was. I know people are like, "Oh, poor you. You got to read the book early," but the whole time I was going through this run, it was everybody telling me, "Oh, I can't wait to get to this part so I can talk to you about this." Then I got to read it for them. I'm like, "Well, now I got to wait to talk to you guys about it. This sucks."
It's like how the turntables have turned.
Yeah.
I finished about 2 hours ago, so it's really raw for me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh man, yeah, you're still hearing his voice in your head, I'm guessing.
Yeah. This is also the first Dresden book that I've listened to and not read.
I guess I should add, I'm not an audiobook guy, and I can't go one video without the first comment being, "Hey, do you know James Marshall's read these? He played Buffy. He played Spike on Buffy the Vampire Slayer." I'm like, "Yes, I am aware. I've been aware of this the whole run." It's not nothing against that. I'm not an audiobook guy. I can't focus on them. But I like James Marshall's.
Yeah, I think we kind of go back and forth there. Sometimes it's just so much more time convenient to do the audiobook. But yeah, I'm with you. It's a little bit harder to focus sometimes. But to go off of that, Josh and I both read the first 15 books, I think 5 years ago, and we've been waiting for some time. But I know, Mike, you've kind of binged through all of these recently, so we may have some different perspectives here.
Yeah, I thought that would happen, because I kind of made this comparison before where when I was reading Wheel of Time, all the people who had read it already were like, "Well, you're going to struggle when you get to this part, this part, this part." And as a binge reader, I was like, those parts didn't bother me at all. So I was like, it must have been different for you having to wait. So I'm thinking this might be the same thing. People who had to wait might have a different reaction to this book. Because like a lot of people I know didn't like Ghost Story. I enjoyed the hell out of Ghost Story. So I'm thinking I also didn't have to wait a year and a half after the crazy ending of Changes, so maybe that affected my opinion there. So I'm curious to see with you guys' opinions if that's how it is with Peace Talks. If it's gonna be a little different for you guys having to wait and maybe not being satisfied, having your thirst quenched.
Yeah, I think that's going to get accurate, and I'm excited to get into the meat and potatoes of this because I think people are going to have similar have thoughts about this book. I think it's going to be more divisive than people would have expected.
What I said is I feel like we got to wait for Battleground before I can give this a fair shake, because it definitely feels like a part one of two. Now, if Battleground comes out and I still feel like, I don't feel like I got very many answers here, that might be, okay, now it's time to talk about this in a different light. But as of right now, I feel like as an act one, I'm personally satisfied. But it's kind of hinges on what happens in Battleground for me.
Yeah, and I guess it's not too bad that we have to wait, 75 odd days now for Battleground. That's not too long, but we're okay waiting for basically additional chapters of the same story.
Yeah.
That didn't seem too convincing, Josh.
No, I mean, okay, so here's the deal. Here's the deal. And I want to wait until we get to the actual plot points to talk about this. But I thought that there were a lot of scenes in this book that just didn't need to be here. And overall, my biggest problem with it is that I don't know why we couldn't have had this and Battleground be the same book, just based on the kind of amount of fluff that was in this book.
See, personally, I just think they should have released the 750-page book. Who cares? But that's just me. I'm also not a publisher, so who knows?
Yeah,
maybe it's in his contract that he owes them a certain number of books. I don't know, but I still feel like, I don't know. I need to wait and see how much feels like could have been cut off of this book and Battleground to make like one really tight 500, 600-page books.
Maybe he's plotting this out and he's been saying for so long that it's going to be 20 books and then the three-part trilogy for the Armageddon thing. And so he's plotting this out and he's like, oh man, I only get to 19 here. What am I going to do? I'll just split this in half and get there.
Yeah, but come on, it's Dresden. He could have just had another Ghost Stories type book that's just, he goes on some adventure to a cool setting.
Some side quest. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's certainly written enough short stories that is totally within the realm of possibility.
Which another thing here is I've read some of Dresden short stories, but I feel like I haven't read all of them. I feel like that was a handicap to me enjoying this book. And again, we'll talk more about that when we're going through the plot.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I did not read the short stories. I intended to after I finished Skin Game, and then much to my happiness, I got that arc like the day after I finished Skin Game. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not waiting now. I was planning to do it in that week between that and the release. So it was kind of a thing. All I've read is Aftermath.
Okay.
I haven't read any of the other ones.
Which is the one like right after Changes, right?
Yeah. So basically, people told me it's basically like the post-credit scene of Changes. So I read that one and I was like, you know what? I don't feel like that added anything to where I can't just read all these when I'm done. But now that I read Peace Talks, like, oh, there's like 3 or 4 things in here I feel like are probably from short stories that I don't know about.
Yeah, I at least went back and figured out what the things were that I needed to know, because I have also failed in reading the short stories, although I have, I think, side jobs sitting in my bookshelf that I do need to read. Anyway, I went back and actually filled myself in on the information I need to know. So for the purpose of this podcast, it will seem as if I've read the short stories. At least I'm going to be a total short stories poser.
But if you're listening this far and just to like our non-spoiler section and you haven't read the book yet, go read the short stories before you go read the book. That's an easy recommendation.
I'd probably recommend it. No, I won't even. I won't. Hang on. I'll just say I recommend that you do that here.
Yeah.
Non-spoilers is hard. How do you guys do this?
Yeah, this is about when we usually get into. This is about when we usually get into spoilers.
So before we go too far into the spoilers, Mike, I neglected to give you a chance to plug your channel. So let our listeners know who you are and what you do and how they can find you.
Okay, well, I run a channel on YouTube called Mike's Book Reviews. It's just on YouTube. I got out of the podcasting business about a year ago, finally, something I did for a long time. But what I wanted to do on this channel was I felt like we'd gotten to a place as a people where we were not allowed to have an opinion anymore. It felt like it was either agree with me or else. And if you don't agree with me, you're stupid. And, you know, you're probably of some insert label here. I wanted to make a channel where I gave my opinion and I encouraged you to talk to me about it. If you disagreed, that was okay. We're going to talk about it. You know what? And even if we disagree after that's done, we're still going to be pals after. So really, it was just to kind of engage people. I don't know anyone in real life that reads the stuff that I read. Okay. No one I know reads high fantasy. No one reads science fiction. No one I know reads Stephen King. So I was like, I want to find people out there who read the stuff that I read so I can talk to them about it. So that's kind of why I really started the channel, and to get, just like I said, engagement. I wanted to talk to people about these books and encourage them. If you disagree with me, that's great. I want to talk to you about it. Bring back discussion. That's kind of my goal with the channel. So it's doing okay. The first year, I think we're rearing up on about 20,000 subscribers at this point. So it's growing well, much more than I ever expected. I think when I got like 500 at this time last year, I was like, wow, this is way better than I ever expected. So it's doing great. It's still something that's a blast to me to do. It is still just a hobby. It's not a job or anything. So I still am very much enjoying it. And I get to meet new people like you guys. This is great. This is my second podcast I've been on today, and it's awesome. I'm having a great time.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time. Phantology is a bit newer than Mike's book reviews, but I guess not by too much. And if you like what we're doing, you can find us at Phantology Books on all the associated channels and distributing platforms and all that. But I think we are now ready to talk some peace talks, what you came here for. So we're going to kind of do our typical thing. We'll talk through the plot points and let Josh and Mike and myself give our reactions and some opinions. And feel free to drop us some comments on what you thought about it. Join our Discord and let us know, because I think this one, it was a little bit divisive. Okay, so as this one begins, book 16, Harry is running on the beach with Thomas, and they kind of do some expositionizing, and then Thomas drops the truth bomb that Justine is pregnant, and then Ramirez shows up, his warden buddy, and tells them that these peace talks are happening between the Fomor and the Accorded Nations, and Marcone will be hosting them, and Harry is going to be kind of contracted to provide security here and make sure that these peace talks don't go south. And Ramirez is kind of in this weird condition, and we get a little more of this as we go on, and he doesn't necessarily trust Harry, and it's because in one of the short stories, Molly actually came on to him as the Winter Lady, and beat him up pretty bad. And because of that, he really distrusts Harry, because Harry is now, the Winter Knight, and so it's got kind of the same energy. And so Ramirez, his former friend, is uncertain of how much he can really trust Harry, and this is going to be an issue with him in the White Council going forward. And then Harry goes back to Molly's apartment, which is guarded by the Swartalves, and he has some pancakes with Maggie and Bonea, who is the spirit of intellect that they got out of his head finally in the previous book. So here's kind of how we begin the book. What do you guys think of some of these events?
Well, first let's review who the Fomor are, because that was a little bit, they've kind of been smaller characters, smaller players, I think, in the Dresden verse, right?
Yeah, so they showed up after changes and the big power vacuum that happened there.
After the Red Court, yeah.
Yeah, after the Red Court got axed, and so they hopped in. They are traditionally, they kind of reside, under the water, and they have surfaced throughout all these different kind of areas that are near oceans and lakes. And so Chicago is obviously one of them. They're seizing power. They're at somewhat of a standoff with the forces of Chicago, which obviously is where the Dresden verse kind of takes place around. But we do know that this fight is a global fight, that all of our different nations are fighting against the Fomor. So it's somewhat of a standoff right now, but they appear to have the upper hand, maybe a little bit. I don't know, that they're still pretty murky.
I didn't think that they were this much of a threat until a little. I don't want to jump way ahead of you here, but until a certain entity shows up later in the book. But as far as right off the bat here, I'm like, okay, I missed something. Why is Ramirez not like, oh, usually before he's like, hey, yeah, the Winter Lady, whatever, you guys do whatever you're going to do. And now he's all like suspicious. And I knew something was up. Was he using a cane? Does it mention in the beginning that he's using a cane? And I was like, well, what happened here? Did I miss something? This was like Deadbeat, I think, when he got like beat up pretty bad. I was like, how long has it been since Deadbeat now? Like 8 years or something. So yeah, I knew something but I had missed something already. So I was already like, damn it, I should have read the short stories.
Yeah, very similar for me too. I was wondering if this was, okay, full disclosure, I hadn't read the short stories before reading this book. I'd read some, but not all of them. And so this was something where I was like, is this going to be a mystery that's like cleared up in this book? And no, it just turns out that there's a short story I should have read.
There's one other bigger interaction with Ramirez later on where he's really heavily leaning on his cane. I don't remember if he mentions that in this one as well, but I imagine if you have a cane in one scene, you probably do in another scene as well. And Harry asks him what happened and why, and he mentions being in a wheelchair as well. And I think he says something like, oh, I went up against, something that maybe I shouldn't have, or something is a lot of my league, something to that effect. And he doesn't give Harry a straight answer, but he just kind of like glares at him a little bit. And that's your understanding that it was Molly.
It wouldn't be a Dresden novel without some poor communication between our characters,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
No
all
doubt.
these problems could be fixed if they just talk to each other.
So much so, yes.
But the Justine being pregnant thing, I heard some people say they gave him like a changes type shock. I was like, not for me. Maybe I was just expecting the first paragraph to be something big at this point.
That does not seem like a changes level thing. That's
No.
like okay, Thomas is getting a little bit more character development. That's at least what I read it as.
Which is something I wanted, yes.
Yeah, right. So it's like, okay, great. Thomas actually has to care about something besides himself and Justine now.
So speaking of character development, what do you guys think of the interactions with Maggie when they're making pancakes? I thought this was some really strong writing here.
Well, as a dad of young children, I thought it was adorable. I don't have another word for it. Adorable, flipping pancakes. Because I try to teach my kid to do that, and it ends up on the ceiling, So pretty good.
Yeah, and especially recognizing that Maggie and Bonilla are like half sisters, kind of, because she's kind of Harry's kid, in a sense, with Lashael.
Yeah.
Harry with the two kids from two different women.
Yep. And so that was fun. I loved it. And I want more of it, honestly. This kind of makes Dresden very human in a way that earlier in the series, him driving around his little, blue Beetle and
living in his hole in the wall apartment and all that.
Yeah. So it gives you as a reader something to relate to Harry with. Even if you don't have kids, you can still relate to seeing a father interact with his daughters. And so I thought it was really a standout part of this book for me.
So some more family stuff when Ebenezer shows up
Oh, here we
and
go.
drops him some info. So he tells him the council kind of has him on the outs, which is really not any new information. Harry has literally always been the black sheep of the family when it comes to the other wardens and wizards. And then they get into this big argument over his treatment of Maggie. Not that he's a bad dad, but just the fact that she's living there with him. Ebenezer thinks is very irresponsible compared to the way that he himself didn't raise Harry. I mean, he's his grandfather, but like gave him no communication or help as a kid because he wanted to distance to keep him safe. And kind of the same little bit of a result of the way that things went down with Harry's mother as well. But this really kind of blows up into a big argument that Maggie gets concerned about, and Ebenezer runs off in a huff. And so this Ebenezer is. It seems like every Dresden book, there are a few characters who Butcher decides are going to be like the main sidekicks of the story. And Ebenezer is a big one in this one. I think Lara Wraith is probably the other big one, other than your typical like Harry, Murphy, Molly type characters.
Ebenezer bugged me in this book, to be quite honest.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So like this first conversation, and I'm going to be skipping around because we're in full spoilers now. The first conversation, I was like, Harry, dude, just tell him that Thomas is his second grandkid. You just need to. He deserves to know that.
Yeah, but like Mike said, we can't communicate in Dresden.
Right.
Nah,
instead,
you wouldn't have a good book then.
Yeah. Instead, Harry waits until literally the worst possible moment to do that. He just waits until like they're throwing down, about to kill each other, to like say, "Oh, and you have a grandson." It bugged me.
So it bugged me as well, but I do think there's like a reason for it. It makes sense. Harry doesn't want to give him this information, which is going to further drive a wedge between them. He'd rather kind of just continue to get by. And it's not until he's really, really pressed to when it finally comes out. So I understand why the bad communication happened. But yeah, you're right, Josh. It bugged me as well.
This is the second part where I'm wondering, did I miss something? Because I was like, Ebenezer's always, I wouldn't say he's been like calm, cool, and collected, but he's never been like a little teenage hothead like I feel like he is in this book. This dude is 0 to pissed off in like 2 phrases in this book. And I'm like, he's never, is it just me? I was like, I never got that vibe off of him. Other people told me, well, if you listen to the audiobooks, it's kind of always, well, I don't listen to the audiobooks, damn it. I read the page and I don't feel like I've ever gotten that kind of vibe off of him. He's like the type of guy that, like, no matter what you say, all of a sudden he's flipping tables. That's what it felt like in this. But the whole time, I was like, dude, like every time they were on page together, I was like, who's going to throw the first punch? That's how I felt the whole time. Who's going to throw the first punch?
And this is another thing where I hope you guys might be able to clear this up. Part of me was justifying it by saying, like, thinking that Ebenezer knew that his daughter had fallen in line with vampires. Does he blame her death on vampires? Like, does he know that much?
I'm sure he blames Lord Wraith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty much he's the one that was involved, but I don't know. It just, I mean, I get it. I don't feel like we've ever gotten this tidbit of information before that. Oh yeah, he just freaking hates vampires to a point of just blindness.
Yeah. It seems like that should have been something that came up before. Also, as soon as Harry knew, he's known about him and Thomas for years now.
But now it's too much. I can assume it's because he's around Maggie. That's the only reason I can think that it really set him off this much, because he was around Maggie too.
But he also hasn't known Ebenezer's his blood grandfather until the end of Changes. And then there's been, a lot that's happened in a kind of a short time since then. So I could see that relationship kind of still settling into that relationship a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. It still bothers me though. Like, it seems like Dresden should have come up with a better way to communicate that.
It's something I get from Ebenezer's point of view. Like, if you look at it from Harry's point, how Harry is with the ghouls, like no matter what, he's always just going to have that blind hatred for them. Ebenezer's the same way with the vampires. I just don't feel like it's been given, that information's been given to us, and now it's just turned to 11 in this book. Not bad. It just, to me, it surprised me at how just easily pissed off he was.
Mike, by the way, since you mentioned Ebenezer and the audiobooks, he's got a nice Texan accent in the audiobooks that might kind of rival
I
yours
didn't know Haas was a Southern thing when I was raised. We don't say Haas in Texas, so I don't know how Southern that is. Apparently, I've learned it's like more of an Oklahoma and like Nebraska kind of thing. But I was like, people tell me that that's like full on Texan, but I lived here since 1993. I haven't ever heard anybody say Haas.
Ebenezer has always felt like the old, like, kind of dependable, and I did feel like this was just a character change for him. and it didn't really feel earned for me.
See, and I was afraid to say that when I did the review, because it's like, what if like the longtime fans are going to tell me I'm wrong? It's been like this the whole time, and I just missed it. But
And the thing is that it would be one thing if this was just like a scene that happened and he could have handled it better. But this is like essential to the entire plot of the book is Ebenezer's like hatred of vampires. And so I feel like Butcher is good enough with his character work that he could have spent a little bit more time getting us like acclimated to the idea. I don't know if this scene was him trying to do that before we got to the big showdown, on the lake. I don't know if this scene was like trying to prep us for that, but I feel like we needed more.
I think it was a little bit. I would say there are at least 3 or 4 different conversations with Ebenezer, major ones, and every single one features him saying, "Harry, you can't trust vampires. Harry, what are you doing?"
Yeah. All right. Enough ranting on Ebenezer. We'll get to that a little bit more later.
I think I spoiled my what thing I didn't like about this a little early.
So next big thing, another big character moment, as Harry meets up with Murphy again. So Murphy's still pretty injured from the beating that Nicodemus gave her at the end of Skin Game. But her and Harry have a really solid adult relationship now, where they've always seemed pretty comfortable with each other, but now they're really kind of settling into some kind of commitment. I guess that level of commitment doesn't come till a little bit later, which we'll talk about when we get there. But for now, they kind of talk, recap a little bit where they're at, and get a little sexual energy on. But they get interrupted by Rudolph and Bradley, 2 of the special investigations officers who come in, and they've got some dirt on both of them from the whole fallout at the end of the previous book. And they kind of issue some vague threats, but this really doesn't go anywhere in this book. So after I finish this book, looking back on this scene, I'm thinking like, why? Where are we going here?
All I've got to say is that Rudolph and the Conjuritis thing in this book, both of them better have a payoff in Battleground, because I have no idea why they're in this book because they weren't important.
Dude, it was like, okay, here comes the biggest cockblock ever.
Yeah. I'm like, God, how many times are we going to stop these 2?
And then they just go back to it after they find out that they could be in jail for I don't know, man. I don't think I
kind
could
of
do
a
that.
mood killer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a mood killer. They must have really been feeling it.
I mean, what has it been since proving guilty when they first talked about getting together? So I mean, we've been talking like almost 8 years here, and it's finally happening, and then it just gets blocked again. I was just like, Jesus Christ, Jim. It's like, I thought Joss Whedon was like an emotional butcher. What are you doing, man?
That's true. I guess in the cockblocks that have happened to Harry in the series, this might be like one of
at least he didn't get shot this time.
Exactly.
Yeah. But come on, Harry's sexual energy is literally never killed. He's always in totally adrenaline rushing.
Especially since he got the mantle, yeah.
Yeah. The Winter Mantle is another thing that kind of bugged me in this book. Like the number of times where we were told, oh, the mantle really tugged on me, and I felt this desire to either kill someone or unleash my sexual energies upon them. And then he's like, oh, but then I mastered myself and put it away. But in the previous 2 books, it seemed like this was something that was really kind of fundamentally changing him, and we'd really have to watch for him. And he wasn't able to control his abilities 100%. But this time, I don't know if like enough time has passed where he's like figured something out. But it seemed like every time it was like in the back of his head, but at the same time, the Winter Mantle was not doing it for me in this one. I
was assuming it's supposed to be like, when he was working on his parkour and all that stuff. It was like his Zen thing where he was figuring out how to control the Hulk inside. That's what I guessed. It's not gone, but he can control it, not just be like a 15-year-old boy who's trying to bang everything he sees in sight or get in a fight with everyone he sees.
To me, this book, it just felt like this was a way for Butcher to come up with as many ways to say, like, to describe being manly as possible, like run around banging my chest or run around like talking about every cool thing I've ever done. Like, it just felt like it was a reason to like come up with a funny thing to say, like over and over and over.
To be fair, most of them are funny.
Yeah, it did add a lot of humor to the book though as well. I mean, that's one thing that I don't think he missed on at all in this one. It was funny, as we come to expect with Dresden.
Can we talk about the Murphy and Dresden like sealing the deal here? Am I the only one who wasn't sure if they did it or not?
Yeah. It was like,
I was like, look, in Skin Game, you give me like this fever dream sex scene that was like so hot I was like tugging on my collar here, and then when it actually happens you leave it ambiguous if it actually even happened or not. If it wasn't for them getting when Ramirez questioned him later on, I wouldn't even have known if they had actually done it or not. I thought that I have an uncorrected proof is what my arc was called, so I thought maybe there's a scene missing or something, but no, everybody says no, that was it. It was kind of like left up to your imagination. I was like, wow, we've been waiting this many books, and then he just kind of figured it out, guys. So I was stunned by that.
Especially because the whole like scene before that was them like getting 95% of the way there.
Yeah.
Like just copy and paste that, put
and
it
it's
over
like
there.
basically get over it, get over here. And it's just like, okay, did they, or were they just, being friendly again? I don't know. I thought it was weird.
Yeah, you're right. It's not until the scene with the wardens where they cast that spell and they realize that he's been with someone. And then also when Lara touches him and she gets the magical energy against her, burned as a vampire. Yeah.
My guess is that maybe some beta readers or something pointed out that they didn't even know if they had done it or not. So he added that random little spell with Ramirez, like, oh, has he been with anyone tonight?
I guess he just didn't think he could top what he wrote in Skin Game because it was good.
Maybe. Because that's honestly kind of what it seemed like to me, was that looking back on it, that they just need to clarify that, yeah, they actually had sex off screen.
Hey, I'm glad they finally did it. Finally.
Yeah.
And in addition, like you see their emotional connection in a lot of other ways as well, especially later on. I'll just go ahead and say later on when they admit that they love each other out loud. And I think, Mike, you mentioned this, like just their silences, the way that they speak.
Yeah. I think that Butcher's gotten better as a writer, and the fact that like he can write a relationship in a way where you don't have to write that corny, cheesy dialogue, which we use in our real lives, but we wouldn't want to write it down on a piece of paper and let everybody read it. He's able to get across the things that they're saying to each other without saying anything at all. I thought it was beautiful. I thought that was gorgeous.
Yeah. For as much as I think in general, fantasy books kind of struggle with believable romances, this has gotten to the point where I could see them like spending their life together, and they respect each other enough to where they could make that relationship work like for the rest of their lives.
As long as they figure out her like mortality part, that would, her short lifespan part, that would be really, really great.
That's true.
It's like an Aragorn, Arwen thing, right? And I guess one other kind of thing there is interesting that even though it seems like Dresden and Murphy have pretty much sealed the deal and they are a couple now, there are these still a lot of fans out there, fan theories that want Harry to be with other women as well. Like,
I don't get it. The Harry Molly people, I don't get it. You guys need to stop it. Just stop it. You're grossing.
There's a lot of Harry Molly people. I think after this one, there's gonna be a lot of Harry and Lara Wraith people. And that one like might be earned a little bit more after this one when Lara kind of seems to have a thing for him.
Yeah, that's what Freydis keeps saying. Like she likes you, like really likes you.
Yeah, we can kind of get into that as well too.
Is there just going to be like a swinger paradigm where like Lara is with Harry and then the Valkyrie lady is with Murphy?
I'm convinced that if it wasn't for feedback, Jim would go all in on that stuff. I don't think he's ever said it. I don't know. You guys might have followed his career longer than me, but I think he gets bothered when people call Harry a misogynistic character. I think he's bothered by that. And I was always, when I was reading, I was like, I don't see why people say that. The dude's went like 10 years without getting laid. How is he a misogynist? Because he thinks beautiful women are beautiful. I think beautiful women are beautiful. I don't consider myself a misogynist. So I think it bothers Jim. And I think that's why he kind of writes Harry a little more where he thinks these things, but he doesn't actually do anything. If he didn't get that pushback, I think he'd make Harry like James Bond. And if it had a pulse, he'd be like, yeah, why not? That's just my opinion.
And we're just getting Harry's like raw thoughts through a first person narrative. So
yeah,
I think the things that end up on the page make a lot of sense.
That's reserved really honestly for what guys think. So honestly, so yeah, I'm with you.
My take on this is if that bothers you, I understand why it bothers you, and Dresden Files isn't for you. And it's not bad.
Exactly. I read those one-star Goodreads reviews, and I'm like, why are you reading book 6 if this bothers you?
Exactly. Like, did somebody just read the first book and then go like rate all the other books 1 star?
Yeah, sure.
It can be a legitimate concern for you, right? Like, I understand it. I obviously like Dresden Files, and I've read all the books, and it's not a deal breaker by any means for me. So just don't read it if it's something you don't like.
There's so many books and you'll never be able to read them all. I always say, don't read something you're not having a good time with.
So speaking of Lara Wraith, she's in the backseat of the new Blue Beetle, the Monster Mobile, and she's in the backseat with Mab, Queen of Air and Darkness, the Winter Queen of the Winter Fae, and they are just there to tell Harry that okay, Lara is owed these favors by Mab, and Harry, you have to help her pay up, and so this is going to be part of the plot going forward. And the next thing that happens is the apartment, Molly's apartment, is on fire, and there's kind of this chaos, panic that's going on. And as Harry investigates and tries to save Maggie, he's frantically looking for Maggie who's in there, right? But he ends up realizing that Eitri, the leader of the Swartovs, was almost assassinated. So someone basically tore through the apartment trying to get to him. And this mysterious person was in fact Thomas Wraith, his brother. Thomas is currently real bad shape. He's been beaten up. And it looks really bad for him because he has violated these accords, these peace talks that literally like every force has agreed to. And it's really strange why he's done this. We have no idea why. We are going to get a theory pretty quickly. But for now, this kind of looks like, okay, we're picking up the plot here, going back to maybe a mystery like we've had in previous Dresden Files. And the mystery is, what is Thomas doing? Maybe who put him up to it, or what were his motivations? So what do you guys kind of think of this way to kind of really get the ball rolling?
I just want to know what in the world Thomas was thinking. There had to be something that set him off. Like, it just doesn't seem like his style, right? I mean, he's had people like this before where he's always seemed to be pretty cool about it. But I mean, unless someone, I don't think that anyone could just say, oh, well, I'll get Justine or something. That's obviously his weak spot. That would get him hot like that. But what did they do to get him to that level? You know, I just don't understand, because the Svartovs seem to not be like that at all. They seem to be like, you silly humans and your, sexual provocativity and all that, or whatever. I forget the words that they actually use, where they find it funny how we are. Yeah, something had to there had to be some serious freaking threats, or someone else has got something on them and said, here's what we want you to do. You got to go try to assassinate this guy. That's all I can think. I have no idea. That's my biggest thing with this whole book. And with the way it ends with Thomas basically being sidelined and probably not going to be in Battleground, I realize I'm not getting this answer anytime soon. It's annoying because now I have to wait for these books like you guys do, and I don't know what to do.
I really hope we get the answer in Battleground. I mean, even if Thomas is sidelined through the entirety of the book, he may or may not be, but we could still maybe like discover a new player or someone who's been manipulating things. Maybe this is part of the Black Council thing that's going on, and Harry finally figures something out. So he could trust something out of someone.
Wasn't it Goodman Gray who said there was like numerous people watching Justine? So, I mean, I got to think that's connected somehow.
So this is my biggest dislike of this book, this whole Thomas subplot. I felt like it was going to be really good when it happened. I was like, okay, great. We're going to get like a compelling story and mystery about Thomas and the wider conversation of these peace talks going on. And so like during the setup, I was like, okay, great. This is wonderful. And then as the book kept going and they like didn't really do anything to investigate. And they just had like a few scenes where they were setting up how to rescue Thomas, which we're going to go through. But it felt like almost just padding, which like the Dresden Files doesn't need padding, like go tell the story and like make it good or just move on. This is where I felt like if they could have just cut all of this out, like if the goal is to get Thomas injured and trapped on the island, then like you can do that all like back to back. You can have him get injured, then Harry takes him to the island. You don't need 300 pages of them running around doing random things so that they could rescue Thomas.
I also want to say, as a binge reader, this actually kind of annoyed me because I love a jailbreak. I love a heist, things like that. But Skin Game just did that, and it had a way better heist than this one. So I was like, it feels like you're following up a heist with one that's not really. It felt like a sequel. It felt like a big budget movie sequel where it was like, it wasn't as good as the original. Because I thought the heist in Skin Game was awesome.
This is like the Ocean's movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What did they even do to rescue Thomas? They like magically kind of manipulated them to get the location of the peace talks moved. And then they had like a hologram of Harry and Matt having sex. And then they like went through a tunnel and there's Thomas, and let's put him in the car and off you go. Like, come on. It wasn't compelling to me. This didn't ruin the book for me, but I just felt like if we're going to have this subplot, have it be good. And like, maybe he's figuring out why Thomas did it as well. And we get that answer, but just to spend so many pages on this thing that's not well done irked me.
Agreed. Harry and Lara, just to correct you there briefly, were the hologram. But
Harry and Lara.
And it seems like there's so much room for a better plot here because we literally have like every single player from the previous book showing up here at these peace talks, there are so many simmering tensions
Yeah, I
that
had
could
no
be
idea who
that could
River
be brought
Shoulders
out
was.
here. Yeah, and people we don't even know yet are coming in. Like, all of these guys have different beefs with each other. So many different ways this book could have gone. And like, Harry could have been investigating, sure. Thomas could have been involved, sure. But bring in these other people and make it exciting and fun and like really build the tension with everyone else. But it seems like everyone's just kind of like standing back and watching as Harry does this minor thing, and then the big thing with the Fomor happens at the end.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but dude, you're not getting Thomas out. Like, he had like what, some potion that he drank that like made him
I think it's the one he used in
invisible?
Full Moon. I mean, like, I know that's probably a long time ago for you guys, but it wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago for me. The one he used in Full Moon to be able to walk to the police station where they basically just, you're not interesting, so they don't even look at you.
Right. But when you have like literal dragons in the room and like like come on. And like I know that it did say like it had that throwy scene where he looked at him and
Well, Odin and the dragon, they stared each other down. So
yeah.
that. Was it
Yeah.
Pharaohvax? Is that his name?
Fairfax, yeah.
Fairfax, uh-huh.
It just seemed like you just like put the bare like literally the bare minimum of work to like make this plot happen.
See, now it's not. Now you guys are trying to make it sound like I hated the book.
No, that's
when you
this
put
is my
these things under
feelings.
the magnifying glass, you nitpick them. But there are certain things that I've come to expect from this series, and I feel like I want to wait for that second half of the book before I judge it. But as a standalone, I'm feeling like there's some things here that just don't feel like they add up the same way the Dresden Files book usually does.
Okay, that's great because in my mind I'm like, it's been 5 years since I've read a Dresden book. I've read a lot more fantasy in that 5 years. You know, I had like read fantasy before I read Dresden, but like I've gotten way deeper into fantasy since I read Dresden. So I'm like, did I just build Dresden up as better than it was? And now that I've read all this other fantasy, it's disappointing to me because like I have higher standards now.
With me is I talk about that my influence for liking the show is I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I loved Angel, I love Supernatural, and I love John Constantine, Hellblazer. To me, that is the four things that make up the Dresden Files, right? And what this book to me kind of felt like is when you'd have a season of Supernatural where you're like, hey, it's like season 13 now or whatever, however many seasons are on the show. I'm like, that's the same plot line from season 7, but it's not as good. Again, I keep going back to saying a lot of stuff feels like it's what he just did, not only before, but in the previous book. And it was done better than that one. So that kind of had me being like, feels like sequelitis.
Conjuritis, sequelitis.
Yeah.
Another thing that makes no sense.
I agree with you guys. I think a lot of what you say is totally online. I think I was maybe a little higher in the regard of I really liked a lot of the quieter character moments where we saw the progression of characters over the years, especially when he goes back to the Carpenters and he kind of like thinks back like, oh, there's these empty rooms at their house now they're grandparents.
Hey, he wrote Daniel off like real quick. I was thinking Daniel was going to be end up getting the one who gets the sword. Now they're like, nope, he's gone.
He's gone with his family. But that's fun to see. And I think that was what I really liked about it because it seemed like these are all real people and they've come quite a long ways. And so if you weren't in Dresden for those things, then you're really going to dislike this book because the action and the plotting, the kind of the breakneck speed wasn't there. It took at least 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the book where it really picked up and you're kind of like blazing through the pages.
I don't know if you have in your notes, but can we talk about Butters and Sonya and the sword training and all that stuff? Because I was really compelled about the sword not being able to actually harm anything except the monster. I thought that was a really neat little twist.
Let's get there. Let's do a few more plot things.
Okay, I didn't want to jump ahead of you. I thought we were talking about the ending almost there.
Yeah,
so I didn't know if you had skipped it. My fault.
I went on a rant.
I'm trying to jump your notes.
We're all too excited about this one. So going back to where we left off on the actual plot, so Ebenezer and Harry have another one of their multiple arguments about vampires, and then they're interrupted by this outsider confrontation. So these type of outsiders are called corner hounds. I thought these were a cool idea. They appear in any surface or location that has a bunch of right angles. So Harry and Ebenezer like run down to this parking garage, right, where there aren't a lot of right angles, kind of a bunch of curves, and they fight them for a while. These are outsiders, so they pack a lot of punch, and Ebenezer is throwing around some serious magic and showing why he deserves the title of the Black Staff. Harry distracts them with this kind of messed up birthday present that he's got ready for Butters, which is like, like super loud T-Rex singing happy birthday, but it's like at a decibel level that no one could really withstand without destroying your eardrums. And it doesn't help that they're in a parking garage, so it's like literally blasting everyone's eardrums apart. The corner hands are distracted by that, and they set up this ring of fire, and they are able to banish them. So I thought this was fun, and I was really kind of skimming through pages here, not skimming through, but really getting into the meat of the action here. And Butcher still does a great job of writing these scenes. Good combination of humor and nice action and magical ingenuity.
I love the idea about the corners. I thought that was a really neat twist to him. He always seems to come up with something new that they can do. Yeah. I like that.
I thought it was wonderful. The whole birthday song, singing happy birthday, super high. I thought it was great. It shows you how Harry is kind of like losing his humanity a little bit to think that that's something that would be funny. But like, it just fits Butter so much. I'm just like, yeah, I was happy with it. I laughed out loud, I think, when I read it. And I love that scene. That's one of my favorite scenes, because it feels like it's driving the overall threat of the outsiders. This is kind of like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, that they're just kind of this looming presence throughout the series. And it shows, these guys are, they're going to put our heroes up to the test whenever they're on screen.
That's a really good comparison, because I think we're getting close to the end game of the series now. We really need the outsiders to feel like a serious threat as we get up to Armageddon. And I feel like we're getting there. I mean, now we know that that's what the Winter Court is there for, to defend the gates of reality against them. And we get some of that at the end when Mab says they're really attacking the gates in force. And now that they're actually getting into Earth reality as well, and Harry and Ebenezer are having a tough time banishing them. So yeah, this is a fun moment. And then this is also where the chondritis happens for the first time, which Mike, you already mentioned, is like, what the heck is this? So hopefully we see this more.
Jim, I know it's going to have a purpose. It's just, since this isn't one full book, it definitely felt like that didn't need to be there. I'm sure it's going to make sense when we finish Battleground. But for this, I was like, okay, I thought the antihistamine thing was funny, because doesn't not make sense. It's just, I don't know. That's part of the Dresden charm right there.
This was something where I felt like he took cues from things like the Wheel of Time, where they have the bubbles of evil pop up. This is just kind of something fun that whenever there's a slow moment going on, he can have chondritis and then like
have some chaos.
Have some chaos.
Hey, we need some crazy spiders outside this dumbwaiter. Why not just have them sneeze and there's some
exactly.
So that's fine. Like you said, Mike, the only thing that we have to combat this chondritis is cold medicine, which Butters prescribes. And then this kind of leads into the middle part of the book, which I'll call the part of the book that we've seen before in other books, where Dresden assembles his team. So he goes around and he just like has these different conversations in different settings with different friends, frenemies, enemies, whoever that he wants to get on his side for this one. So he goes and he talks to Butters for a bit. He goes and he talks to Lara for a bit, and they had this sparring match, and she says that, look, I really want to help Thomas. He's my brother, but my hands are tied here. And then he goes and talks to the younger wardens, who are kind of his friends, but also don't trust him. And a lot of that is because of, I think, Ramirez's hesitancy towards him as the Winter Knight. And finally, we get Molly on the scene. So Harry summons Molly. She's full on Winter Lady now, and they actually have to like strike this official bargain for her to help Thomas. So Molly is still his ally very much, but she is also bound to Winter just as much as Harry is, and that's going to be important. And then the final thing before the talks start is this really good moment where he goes back to Michael's, he goes back to the Carpenters, and I know, Mike, you were wanting to get to this lightsaber. Well, not really a lightsaber, but
not a lightsaber.
Yeah, exactly.
It's basically what you can do without getting sued by Lucasfilm. What can we get away with here? That's what that was.
Just wait until Disney starts buying publishing companies, and then we can start having lightsabers in books.
All right. So before the peace talks start, what kind of struck you guys here in these moments? Obviously, the lightsaber.
Well, I thought for sure that he actually did cut Sonya's hand off here, because I was like, well, that's the Star Wars thing. You got to cut off someone's hand, right? But it was an interesting little thing that I think is going to come into play, obviously, later, because I think even Michael brings it up. Yeah, you can't hurt any monsters, so what's just going to keep a monster from hiring some heavy to come and take you out? So basically, Butters has got to learn he can't just get by on just being, swinging a lightsaber wildly. He's going to have to learn how to actually fight.
And this is so cool. I feel like we're seeing, like with Butters, we're seeing a normal guy, quote unquote normal guy, become a hero.
Yeah.
And I really like what Butcher's doing with that. Because with Dresden Files, we jump in and Harry's already a hero. He already has some wins under his belt. He's already kind of established himself. With Butters, we're taking this guy and we're throwing him into the paranormal. And then not only are we just throwing him in, but we're making him, a heavyweight in the world. So I think it's really cool what Butcher's doing with Butters here.
I hate to keep making these comparisons, but I'm going to keep doing it because I love it. Something that Joss Whedon always did with Buffy and Angel is he would take a character that could be considered like a wimp at the beginning, and by the end of the show, they were like a badass. And Wesley on Buffy and an Angel was a complete paunch, just a complete wimp. And then by the end of that series, he was freaking James Bond. So I think it's been that kind of development for Butters. You think back to where he was before Polka Will Never Die and where he's at now. It's like two different characters. He's taken enough time to develop this character of that's believable. It's been like 7-8 years that he's been doing this. So I'm on board for it. I love it. Podcast that's on this morning, they aren't so crazy about Butters. I'm like, well, I still like Butters and I still love Harry and Karen. So suck it.
Yeah. I love Butters. I also love how Butters is just like in a little, non-monogamous
That
relationship.
Was something.
Yeah. But but that's something else that goes to show, like, okay, here's this guy who starts off as being just a normal guy, but he's developing into this guy that's like so much more than that. Mm-hmm. And not that like, I think everybody should be in a non-monogamous relationship or anything like that, but it just shows that he's comfortable enough in himself to like do what he wants with whom he wants. I thought it was cool. It was a nice little awkward moment, but fun character development for him.
I think he was like, okay, well, I've got an agnostic Knight of the Cross. How do I up that on another Knight of the Cross? So let's see here.
Yeah, well, it was fun for me. I mean, it was one of those times I'm like, oh, okay, all right, Butters, you got it.
And I guess speaking of Knights of the Cross, we're still looking for one more.
Number 3, yeah. Like I think I've got to finally let go of my Murphy one, unless she's going to use the sword as a cane. It's probably not going to happen. But I've been championing Murphy for that sword for a while now.
It's been hinted at for long enough.
My next theory was it was going to be Daniel, the way they were setting that up. Obviously descended of Michael, descended of Charlemagne, anything like that. So I thought that's where he headed. But like I said, he wrote that out in one sentence in this book. So that ain't happening. So I have no idea who's getting that sword. And I don't think we're going to find out. I don't think we're going to find out until that trilogy.
Yeah, it seems like it could be a big moment at the end. Maybe a twist we're looking forward to at the end.
If it ends up being Harry, I'm going to barf.
Yeah, come on. Harry's already OP, man. He doesn't seem OP, but like literally there's nothing he can't get himself out of, it seems like, in these books.
Yeah, even death.
After he gets knocked out a couple of times, he'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the peace talks start. They're taking place at the Brighter Future Society headquarters. This is headquarters of the United Group of Chicago Resistance Fighters. And this is at this, Harry describes it as a castle. It's really just Marcone's new house, HQ, that is built on top of Harry's old house. And I thought this was kind of one of the stronger parts of the book, with these moments where Harry was reflecting on how he just wanted to go home and he couldn't go home anymore because obviously his house is burned down and he's got like nothing familiar to go back to. And then towards the end, when he busts Thomas out and he's in his sub basement where he spent so much time, that was kind of poignant for me. So I really like that part. And so as Harry sees the castle, he reflects upon this, and then the talks start. And first thing happens, we figure out where everyone is seated. We kind of like get an overview of the room, who's there, how have they changed in the past few years. I was a little disappointed in kind of missing action between some of them. By the time you get to the end of the book, I was hoping for a little more. People like the archive, for example, like we just saw her, but no interaction there. Maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity.
Of course, she has hips now. Because
of course, she's older
I
now.
was like, wow, he just could not wait till she got old enough for him to write that.
I will say that's one time. These are times when I'm like, okay, Butcher, like, okay, we get it.
Can't help yourself, yeah.
So Lara meets with Eitri and gets not a bargain, but she at least gets Thomas to be moved to Marcone's castle out of the impregnable Swartov place. So now we think we have a way to get Thomas out, because we can get through the security of Marcone's castle, which really doesn't quite make sense. Like, I don't see Marcone being lax on security, so it feels like
Really,
a bit of a plot hole.
one security guard. One security guard.
And this guy flew over brick by brick a castle from what country? Europe, somewhere in Europe, so that it could keep its enchantments up. Like, you'd think he's just gonna here's a flume that goes down to my secret dungeon.
Yeah.
Like, come on, give me a break.
Seems
It did
strange.
seem a little simple, yeah.
But anyway, that's how
Okay, all right.
when we talked about not liking the Oceans sequel plot, the heist plot here.
Yeah, definitely Ocean's 12 and Skin Game is Ocean's 11. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Harry also talks with River Shoulders, who is a Sasquatch.
Which I knew I'd missed something when this guy came up. Way too much backstory for this not to have been something that
Seems
had been
important right away.
established
There are actually 3 short stories that establish him. I haven't read any of them, but I did read a summary of them, so I at least know kind of what happens in them. And the strongest comparison I have with River Shoulders to another fantasy character, I'm going to say Loyal from Wheel of Time. You know, like this giant wise guy that's
Writing a book.
writing a book, wears glasses in order to not look too intimidating to humans. Maybe like talks a little bit slow. I don't know. It kind of seems like a Loyal to me.
You're picturing Loyal, and
Now I'm not gonna not see Loyal next time I think about this character.
Yeah, I've ruined River Shoulders for sure. You can also just picture a Sasquatch because that's literally what he is.
Yeah, but when you do that, all I see is Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, and I just can't stop laughing. So I just try not to do that.
What I did like, and I don't know if this was explored more in the shorter stories, but I did kind of like getting a glimpse into the 3 different kinds of Sasquatch, like the ones that try and kind of assimilate into human society, and then the ones that just try and stay hidden, which is like 90% of them, and then the ones that like want to, annihilate humanity. I think
Like
that's
the
a cool.
Janoska.
Yeah, the Janoska. I thought that was a cool, little side politic scheme that Butcher came up with.
Were you guys upset that there wasn't more actual like peace talks in a book called Peace Talks? I mean, were you guys kind of disappointed? Because there was one point where I felt like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. I was like, you are going to have peace talks in your Peace Talks book. I mean, we know that Harry's not a political guy. I mean, I know that, but I think outside of Marcone throwing down the gauntlet and telling everybody, yo, you're part of these accords, and you walk out that door, you're a coward. I think other than him acting like a big boss there in that moment, I didn't see any like politicking in this book at all.
It got close. We got to the point where we were supposed to have him, but we immediately didn't. That was the extent of the talks.
I know. I was ready. I was like, okay, I'm going to go into this book. I'm going to have like, all these wikis on hand. Because I know I'm going to be lost in, some of the smaller minutia of what's being discussed. And then quickly I realized, I'm like looking at how much more of the book I have left. I'm like, we're not getting peace talks in here.
Yeah, I was at like 88%. I was like, it isn't going the way I thought.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, my overall thing, and this is just, it's still jumping ahead. I'm just like, why couldn't we have just cut out the fat with Thomas's storyline, with his high storyline, and have actual peace talks in here? Because that, to me, that would have justified the 2-book arc. Is like one book going through all these peace negotiations and really firming up alliances, and then having it fall apart. And now all these alliances are together. They've established this greater, alliance, and now we're ready to take on these big bad guys.
So make it a political intrigue book. We haven't really had. I mean, we do get some politics always between the different courts, but like politics between all of Supernatural, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I was expecting like a Jack Ryan book with this or something, his take on like a Jack Ryan book with humor, of course. I'm not one who needs everything broken down like that. I was just rather surprised. I thought this was going to be the actual like negotiation. And then I assumed the next book's called Battleground, being, oh, well, guess the peace talks didn't go so well. That was kind of how I thought it was going to go. But I think that was just too on the nose.
Well, so I think we're supposed to move on from here with all of the characters and all these different players in the Dresden verse, like all being allied now. I'm afraid that's what's going to happen. And we're supposed to buy it because they had these peace talks.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's supposed to be that unifying us versus them kind of moment. Yeah, we got to, unite or die kind of thing.
So I think the issue with that, and I guess we're further jumping ahead, but I don't think there's any holding us back at this point. But I think the issue with that is the force that they're supposed to be allied against doesn't really seem earned. Like this goddess Titan comes in, right? Ethnu. And this is now the big enemy, and the Fomor have like enlisted forces. Maybe they've crossed a line here. and now they're going to mess with the mortals too much, and so everyone else that was previously squabbling is going to get together to fight against them. And I guess that's what you're saying. You guys are worried about that's going to happen. It's not going to feel right. And I think the problem is that they just kind of like threw in this Titan goddess in out of nowhere. It's like, who is this person? And this is now going to be the big bad. Is that what we're thinking? Like,
it's got to be. If you can flick Mav through like 3 walls like that, then yeah, I think so. It's
right. And what happened to the Black Council thing? Because that was what really caught my attention quite a bit over previous books. Like, I want to know about the Black Council, because that seems really intriguing. I like the idea of a traitor and everyone's.
And who the hell is Cowl?
Yeah, it's still a thing. We have no idea.
Okay, if these answers come in Battleground, then we'll all look back on this book and like it more, I think. But yeah, exactly. I just feel like we needed more motivation to really care about this new big threat.
Well, I think them whole at the outer walls, is that what they're called? Them whole like that whole thing is supposed to be like, look, whatever our problems are, we need to take care of that, because if that goes wrong, we're all screwed. I think that's what we're supposed to take it as.
Yeah, and there was that throwaway line like, oh, the outer walls have been under attack as of the last hour, and so like Harry's like, well, they're working together, but that doesn't seem like it's really how you should write conflict. Like these two huge, powerful forces are now allied against everyone else in the space of 10 pages.
Yeah, so I guess we hope that really figures itself out in Battleground and makes sense and seems a little more earned than it did towards the end of this one, at least. Should we talk about the whole Starborn thing? Because we finally got some answers for that in this book. I liked that. That's been kind of a lurking mystery for a while.
Maybe you guys can explain it to me, because I'm not going to lie and say like I completely understood what was going on here with the whole Starborn thing. The problem with binge reading these and not having the break is I didn't have all the time to theorize, and think about all the speculation and crazy theories like I've done with Song of Ice and Fire since the year 2001, bastard. So these are some of the things I wasn't even thinking about, like Starborn. And I do feel like the Starborn thing in this is like, it does feel like it's like 2 sentences and then it's never touched on again, right? He just kind of like mentions it. Ebenezer just kind of mentions it to Adam.
Yeah, he mentions it after they fight the Corner Hounds. I think it comes up one more time towards the end. He's talking with someone about this. I don't remember who it is.
But what exactly does this mean? I mean, I've heard people saying that Elaine must also be Starborn too, and I'm like, why?
Yeah,
what am I missing?
I think she has to be, right? Because weren't they born at the same time? Or okay, I might butcher this as well, because honestly, I haven't thought about this a ton going into it. So if we're making mistakes, let us know on Discord or drop us a comment or whatever. But from my reading of the book, my understanding is if you're Starborn, you have some power over outsiders, which Harry has in this book, and he has had with He Who Walks Behind in previous books. And what it just means that like you're born every 666 years leading up to a big apocalyptical event. And so that is coming. We know that's coming. So Harry's role as the Starborn is going to be crucial in fighting against the outsiders at the time. I don't really know. Seems kind of like this prophesied hero type of thing is coming up.
Okay, because I was like, man, I totally missed something here, because has it been said that him and Elaine were born at the same birthday? Did they have the same birthday? Has it said that before?
We might have to wiki that, but I know I've heard that Elaine must be a Starborn, so I feel like that's confirmed. But I can't give you. I
just figured this was just from me reading too fast, because I was like, I feel like I missed something there. And then the fact that we do get that answer, and like I said, it's like 2 sentences, and then we don't hear about it again. Yeah. Isn't that kind of a big deal?
Okay, yeah. Another rant time for me. One, I've always liked the idea of Harry not just being a chosen one, like that. Okay, here's this hero, like he's coming up and he's being earned, like he's earning all of this, right, himself through hard work and kind of slugging it out on the streets of Chicago. That always appealed to me. Now I'm fine with chosen one tropes, and I think that Butcher can do it well. So that kind of bugged me, but I'm also kind of okay with it. But then throwing in the fact that now he can just kind of do whatever he wants with these powers. He can just have it be so that he can just banish outsiders, and that he can put his will against them, and that he can like just get this whole new power set that we've never seen before. That bugs me.
He wasn't OP enough.
Yeah. Additionally, it also bugs me that the entire White Council knows about this, right? They all know Dresden's birthday, right? You can assume that if he's this big prophesied hero, that they know about it, right? They're not stupid. So why the heck did they, if they knew that he was their literal save, like only way to be saved, why did they put him under the doom of Damocles? Like, why were they almost to execute him? Why are they kicking him out of the White Council? There should be like kind of a Rand situation where like they know that he's kind of dangerous, but they're keeping him close because they want to be able to like control him, just big overview of that. Like they should be politicking to make sure that he does what he needs to do, not like constantly trying to kick him out of the White Council.
Maybe it's like the Severus Snape thing, and they actually loved him the entire time.
Just why, like this doesn't make sense to me with the White Council. Why are they going to execute Harry if he's the only one that can like prevent the outsiders from coming in?
Okay, I looked up Word of Jim. He says Harry and Elaine are just a few months apart in age-wise, so for all intents and purposes, the same age. This is one of the reasons that Justin had handpicked both of them to adopt. It wasn't just random kids with power. This was Jim Butcher on her having the potential to wield power over outsiders. So I think that makes a lot more sense now that I've read that. I never read these Word of Jim things while I was reading because I didn't want spoilers. So now I can read all these things. I'm excited.
I love Words of Jim, kind of like Words of Brandon for big Cosmo fans out there. But why isn't Elaine more of a character then? If we're thinking that she's almost certainly a star when she's only in 2-3 books.
I said that in my Peace Talks wish list is I hope I'm not going to get massacred for this, but I was like, I'm indifferent on Elaine. I've never cared. It's not that I dislike her. I just don't have any opinion at all because I feel like it's when you have a buddy that you made in high school and you say you got to be really good friends, and he talks about this girl that he dated before you even knew each other, and it's like, I mean, you care because that's your friend. He cared about this person, but other than that, what do you really know about him? You don't really have any feelings for that person. So that's kind of how I felt about Elaine the whole time. It feels like Butcher's telling me I'm supposed to care about this person. I'm like, I just kind of don't. And when she shows up what's like once every 5 books, and it's just like, oh, hey, you're her again.
Yeah.
It does seem like an unnecessary character, honestly.
Unless he's planning on having her come in and be the second, key to defeating the outsiders, is Harry has to get her.
I don't think he'd have her keep coming up if she was just kind of going to be a throwaway character. So he doesn't seem like he does anything just for the heck of it. That's why I'm saying, okay, give the Conjuritis thing a break. It's going to make sense.
If Justin, and I'm sure that there's theories abounding in this, but maybe Justin was the one that was actually trying to defeat the outsiders, and that's why he was like trying to break them, like teach them dark magic, which was really magic.
Actually, a good guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe the outsiders were on, maybe Justice was on the outsider side, and Elaine is going to be like the ace that the outsiders have up their sleeve to be able to, to take on Dresden.
Yeah, it's been hinted at for a while that someone's going to betray Dresden. Could be Elaine.
Even in this book, I have a note down saying like it was very ominous when Ebenezer was like, looks like they're going to do it the old-fashioned way and have someone stab you in the back. Mm-hmm. That's foreshadowing. Like someone's going to stab Dresden.
Oh, yeah. You want to talk about foreshadowing? Wait till we get to Demon Reach and what the conversation that him and Murphy have. Sorry.
Yeah.
I want you to remind me about that when we get there.
Let's see. We left off at the peace talks, but we kind of talked through this. Harry and Murphy had the good conversation where they say that they love each other. We talked about their relationship. We talked through the poor heist, the heist light version, we'll say. We talked Ethnu coming in with the Fomor. And so the peace talks have fallen apart. Ethnu blasts off this EMP. She kicks Mab through like 3 walls. She's super OP. Everyone's afraid of her. This seems like the most serious threat we've seen to date because we have a gathering of it includes Odin, a literal god, who's there. So there's some really heavy hitters here, but everyone's afraid of Ethnu in this magical eye that she has. Marcone is able to hold them together after this all falls apart. And then the outer gates are under attack. So I'm just kind of blazing through events here. But then finally, to catch us up, Harry meets up with Murphy and Lara and Freitas and Thomas at the Water Beetle, and they're going to take off towards Demon Reach, but Ebenezer comes in before they can take off, and they get into a little wizard duel, and Ebenezer takes him down, and it seems like he kills him. Like he sends a rock or a comet through his chest or something. Harry's bleeding out. Ebenezer loses his cool because Harry's admitted to him that Thomas is his brother. And we know right away, we know pretty quickly that he doesn't really kill him because it turns out that Harry was projecting using this ring that he's got. But this fight, I mean, it's been foreshadowed quite a bit throughout the book. What do you guys think of this one?
The fight was really cool. I hated seeing him fight, honestly, but if either of you guys are big fans of the Disney Star Wars sequels, I apologize. This feels like The Last Jedi done right with the projecting thing. At least that part, I'll say the positive there. Jim obviously is still writing action at the top of the game. I don't see it. Maybe Sanderson might be the only other one in the genre who can write it as good as he can, I think. Yeah, I hated seeing the two of them fight, and seeing how far Ebenezer was willing to go really was heartbreaking, not just for Harry, but for the reader too.
Yeah, it felt earned within this book. I don't know within the series, but within this book, this fight felt earned to me. Like seeing the tensions just rising and rising and rising. I liked it. I thought, again, yeah, like you said, Mike, the action is top notch. You can really
all my gripes
visualize.
of the book, it's not with the writing and in the action at all. No way.
I love how you just see him, floating above the lake on this like huge boulder. Like you get these scenes in your head that are just so epic. And I know I've gone on rants in this video, but like I like this book. Okay. So like because of scenes like this where it's wish fulfillment, you're just like, yeah, just finally you're just like letting me see these two awesome wizards that like have a lot of power, duke it out. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I would say every Dresden book for me, I can think back to the book and I have like one or two visuals that come to mind, like, oh, that was the T-Rex one, or oh, that was the heist one, or oh, that's the one with the they fight in Chichen Itza, etc. And this moment and probably the parking garage moment were the two that stood out to me. Maybe a little bit with Demon Reach when he's fighting with Lara and Freitas.
Yeah, but all the Demon Reach scenes just kind of blend together in my mind. It's just kind of like, okay, now Harry's at this dark, dreary island.
Well, I really like how he controlled the island and make the trees move around and stuff and fight for him.
Made me think of the Ents.
Yeah.
I always Tolkien, sorry. But so does Butcher.
So they head off to Demon Reach. Harry recovers, and Ebenezer, kind of stays there to deal with maybe whatever emotions are sweeping over him at the time. Murphy makes Harry promise to talk to Ebenezer once emotions have cooled a bit. He does agree to do that. So I'm guessing we'll have some kind of conversation in Battleground. Hopefully they can work something out. I mean, we want these guys to get on the same side and communicate effectively. We haven't seen it ever.
I want to think they could, but who knows? With this new page that Ebenezer's turned over where he's just pissed at the world, I'm not so sure.
So Harry goes and he imprisons Thomas in Demon Reach. This, I guess, has been his contingency plan all along. It's a bad deal for Thomas because he has to feel the pains that he's inflicted on others for eternity for as long as he's there. And Harry isn't exactly sure if he's going to be able to get him out, or if he is, how he's going to be able to cure his issue going on here. So it's a bad situation, but it's like the only thing that he can do, I guess.
So I think I read that differently than you, Stephen. I think that he had to feel all the things that he's inflicted upon others, like when he got in there, and then while he's in there, he's just like
in stasis.
Like, I don't think he's continually feeling that. I could have read that wrong.
Well, I hope that's the case. Maybe I'll go back and check that.
Either way, still has like kind of this atonement type setting where he has to like experience all of this. Yeah. I think that's going to be really, it must be so interesting for Thomas to feel this because it's in his nature. He has to do it to survive, to like put other people through, pain. And so I really like how how Butcher makes you like demonsterizes monsters. It's like, these are predators that like need to live.
And also monsterizes regular people. Like Marcone is just as much as a monster as anyone else, but he's just a regular dude with no powers.
Yeah.
Dude, he was a boss in this book. I don't even care what anybody says. That dude was just getting up in ghouls' faces and being like, "You a pussy if you leave." And I was like, dude, Marcone is he's got the biggest balls in the room. I've always loved Marcone, so yeah.
No, and don't get me wrong, I love Marcone as well, but I don't think there's any fighting against the fact that he himself is a monster and a mobster. And
oh, sure, definitely, he's Kingpin. He's definitely Kingpin. Yeah,
yeah, the only mortal to ever sign the Accords. So Thomas is imprisoned. Lara freaks out because she's seen this happen. She charges against Harry. They have kind of this quick fight. Harry takes down her and Freitas. Murphy kind of helps with the nice moment where she just pulls a grenade pin.
Dude, she pulls a grenade out of her pocket. Heck yes. I'm always packing a grenade when I go out on a boat. Why not?
Dude, that was so awesome. Stephen, can I just step back to one thing you said? Okay, so another thing that kind of bugged me about this was the Accords in general. Like in my mind, they've always been like here's these eternal accords, I guess you could say, like they've always been around. And I know that's obviously wrong and was wrong in my head canon, but like it felt like these accords were just kind of untouchable and like they kind of govern like are the underlying magical rules for the Dresden verse. But I think that was just wrong in my head canon, but that's just kind of how they've been portrayed to me throughout the series. Whereas in this book, they just felt like, oh yeah, they've been accords that have been around for the last, X amount of years, but they're not
They
really
kind
that
of say like,
foundational.
yeah, we signed the accords, but the accords are really Mab, and so we just saw Mab got destroyed, so we don't need to follow the accords anymore.
Yeah, we
Right.
only signed the accords because we were scared of Mab. Yeah.
Which is like
Yeah.
realistic, but I don't feel like that's been how the accords have been treated up until now. Yeah, anyway, super cool scene at Demon Reach. That was some awesome action. Again, just more climactic scenes with Harry being again OP, but now he's really in his prime on the
I think Harry
island.
does make one big tactical mistake in this fight. So he grabs Freitas, the Valkyrie, and throws her off of the island, but the island is where he has the power. He throws the enemy towards Murphy, who is, not nearly at 100%. So, like, he's endangering Murphy. Why doesn't he just hold Freitas in the same way that he's holding Lara?
Yeah, why doesn't he just hold her in the tree that is throwing her?
Yeah.
Dang it,
Well, I
Steven,
talked
this
about the
is
foreshadowing with Murphy, where she makes him promise none of that macho bullshit, where you make me stay on the island and you go fight anything, and he's like, "I agreed, even though I knew it could end up being her death." I'm like, foreshadowing much? So yeah, I think I know what's happening in Battleground.
Yeah, it would really be heartbreaking if Murphy was to die. I think
It's the Joss Whedon way. You get these kids together, then one of them either dies or turns evil. It's got to happen. She's got to die or turn evil. One or the other.
I mean, he already sacrificed Susan. I mean, they weren't as close as him and Murphy, but that would be
That
rough.
means it'll hurt more. I mean, Jim doesn't not seem like the type of guy who would get power off of our tears, right? I mean, so I just felt like super foreshadowing to me, that conversation right there.
So to get ready for Battleground, Harry takes a couple magical items from
Yes.
Alfred. I love how he calls Alfred. Alfred's like the demon reach.
I thought that
assistant.
was just going to be like a one-off thing. I didn't know that was like permanently it now. So that's great.
I feel like this is to the roots of Dresden, where he's just like being so immature with these like eternal beings that like are so much more powerful than him that he just gives them like a nickname just to be a prick. He's just like, yeah, you're Alfred.
Yeah. And in this case, Alfred brings him a couple items that he got from the Hades vault in Skin Game. So he's got this Amathene. I might have said that wrong. Close enough. And this is like this magic ritual knife that will hopefully imprison Ethnu. I don't think it's any secret that this is Harry's initial plan. If this is his initial plan, we know it's not going to go right in Battleground. But this is what he's going to start with, we can assume. And he's got this placard, which we don't know much about. Harry seems to know something. So we're going to see these items for sure in Battleground. That's kind of where we start. And then they hop on the boat. They take off back towards Chicago, where I'm guessing stuff is about to go down. And we will meet back in 77 days. Or a little bit sooner for Mike, because I assume you're getting your advanced reading copy.
Yeah, I did get the notice that I will be getting it. I don't know when, but the publisher did say they were happy with my review. So I guess I'm approved now. They'll send it to me. The whole thing, I did my whole not vacation, but my Sunday Bible school thing when I read Skin Game about what these 5 holy artifacts were. Now, the placard, I believe, is the sign that they hung on the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. As far as what its power is, I have no idea. The dagger, I believe, is the leftovers of the Holy Lance, which is the spear that stabbed Jesus in the side, and which makes him like always victorious. Because if you read Skin Game, you'll notice once he takes that knife, all of a sudden he starts winning every fight that he's in. And before that, he was getting his ass kicked nonstop. I think I know what the power of that is. It will make him.
This is the Elder Wand.
Be more OP, yeah. But as far as the placard, I have no idea what that can do. Maybe that's what they plan to write the new accord.